sense for them as well. I came to this church 19 years ago, and we had a big building. And there was one room in the building that was full of stuff. It had pews piled up. It had just stuff in it. And I said, let's go through this stuff. And back in the very, very back of that stuff, and Rick, if we're going to change a couple things out here, I found an old palm tree that had been sitting there for I don't know how many years. So I said, let's try and see if this thing come back. So over the next couple years, I watered that palm. I did everything possible. I got food for that palm and I drove it into the dirt. The dirt was like this. So I got a big iron rod and I put holes in the dirt. We got to get that palm up there at some point.
It's coming.
It's a coming. There it is. And there's my palm. So I don't know what happened to that palm. But I do know that when we moved into our office, that palm showed up. And I have no idea. Sally, do you have any idea how that palm ended up there? I don't know, but
We moved it there.
I don't know what the dream was. But I saw that palm as integral to what our church is doing. About something that seemed to be dead. So I went online, and you can go ahead and push that. I went online and I looked at how to bring dead plants back to life. And here's what I discovered. We had to get a trash can, fill it with water, and drop the whole palm in it. And literally let the solid rock piece of dirt, it took about 2 weeks before it to soften up. And we started seeing something happening to that palm. And Jenna, if you could go and help Edie. As we worked on that palm, and I want to say Edie was very integral to this process because she's the one that said, if you do that, you're going to kill it red hot. And I go, oh, well, we won't do that. And Mark back here, he was helpful too. He said, well, have you ever tried grafting that? And I said, I'm not going there, brother. So we watched it grow. We watched little pieces of life come back. And I want you to get that this thing was probably 20 years dead. It sat there in this state that was totally ridiculous. And now, it can't get in the door.
Where do you want it?
So, I want to thank Mark for helping us haul this over here because it's the heaviest metaphor I've ever been a part of. But I want you to understand that this was dead. This was dead. And it is no longer dead. People have told me in this region and all over that we are dead. Why don't you let it go, Red Hawk? And I said, because God won't let me. And there's a bunch of people here who said, God won't let me. You see, ultimately we're all going to die. Yeah, even this church. Everything dies. No one gets out alive. And you can go back to that other piece. Now, on Easter Sunday, there seems to be this glitch that happens in my thinking. Because for those of you who know me, I'm very scientific in my thought. I really believe that spirituality can be empirical. That we really can have an experience of God. If God is love, then hey, every time someone does something loving, we are guiding each other. You children, every time your parents put food on the table, you've just been guided. You know those moments, those really quiet moments, you young people, when your parents are putting you to bed and there's those really wonderful moments of honesty and truthfulness? There's something ultimate, and it's not death. And I want us to get that up till Jesus Christ, death was the ultimate thing. That was it. And Jesus showed us something unbelievable. Now, I will say I went through the Gospels, and I went through the whole New Testament, and you know there is not one account of the resurrection. There's nobody inside the tomb that says this is what happened. There's actually one account of the resurrection by the Gospel of Peter, but it didn't get written until like 230, and it was considered heretical, which was not very helpful for my study. But there are two themes in every single gospel and in every single account. And the first theme is the empty tomb. And on the empty tomb, within every account, there's agreement and harmonization. You can see Mark's, and well, not Mark's, but you can see John's, and you can see Matthew's, and you can see Luke's, and they all jive. The empty tomb. And the second one is the appearances. However, none of the appearances jive. You cannot harmonize the appearances. They're all different. What's going on? You can't reconcile them. If you got all those people who saw Jesus and experienced him, they would have one heck of an argument. By the way, that's what theology's been doing for the last 2,000 years, arguing. You see, there's this common interest between the empty tomb stories also and the women. And this is another piece that comes under these themes. Because women were not permitted to testify or witness in either Hebrew courts or Roman courts. Women were the least trustworthy of all witnesses, and they were not even considered relevant. So in every gospel, who is it that gets it and is told to go testify?
The women.
The women, thank you. That's exactly right. So what is going on here? Even in death, Jesus is turning everything upside down. Jesus is leading us somewhere that is quite amazing. Now, I want to say right off that Easter is no time for linear thinking. There are those who say, if Jesus didn't get up in this body and walk out of the tomb, then we cannot believe. And there are some who say it's totally metaphorical, and if you think differently, you're totally ridiculous. And I'm going to suggest both are wrong, because we're not supposed to be sure. It wasn't until Heisenberg's engagement in physics that we came across what's called the uncertainty principle. And I want to say that we're hanging right at the uncertainty principle of spirituality. We are supposed to be in this saying, what? No, this couldn't have happened. We are supposed to be wrestling in our heads about the empty tomb. And when we wrestle and when we create the opening, something happens. We begin to experience. And this is what I believe it's all about. The experience is real. All through, not just in gospel, but all through history. Whether you call them the mystics or the saints or just everyday people, they're experiencing the holy presence of God in Jesus Christ. There's a new movie coming out called Heaven is Real. I just saw a review of it. 3-year-old went and met Jesus. Now, I can go through all the neurological stuff. I can go through a whole series of understandings, and I've got tons of them in my pocket. If you ever want to talk, I'll bring them out. But I'll be honest, we don't know. And God doesn't want us to know. Because when we know, we close it. When we don't know, there's a piece of us that's open. Just a little piece. And that little piece is where God's foot ends up getting in the door of our lives. And changes every single thing. God in Easter is not something that happened 2,000 some years ago. It's a moment that is accessible every day if we dare to just consider, say, what? That small little opening. There's this moment when a whole new world of possibilities can get in, where we have been so hurt, so changed, that God can come in and do something. It happens all the time. It happens in these little places in our lives. There's one that I found this week about a guy named Philip. Philip was a boy with Down syndrome. He was in the 3rd grade, and he'd go to Sunday school every single week. And he loved it. And you know in the 3rd grade how kids are, they all band together. But Philip was never part of anybody banding together. He was always out there by himself. He was never quite accepted because he was different. One Easter, the Sunday school teacher got this idea, and there used to be these pantyhose that would come in these eggs. And so she got a whole bunch of those, and on Easter Sunday during Sunday school, she gave each of the kids one of those eggs and said, go out and put something in it that represents Easter. So all the kids went out, and you know how they are, they're crazy, they're running all over the place, having a great time. And they all came back, and they all put their eggs on the table, and they mixed them up. And then they started opening. And one had a flower in it, and they all oohed and ahed, and they talked about what it meant about Easter. And one even had a butterfly that flew out of it, and they all went, oh, that was so cool. And you know, it was just awesome. One kid put a rock in it, and they opened it, and they said, that has nothing to do with Easter. And the little kid goes, I knew they'd be putting flowers and butterflies and sweet stuff in there, so I put a rock, just to be different, and that's my new life. And they went through the eggs, and they finally found one, and they opened it, and it was empty. And all the kids said, well, that's stupid, who did that? That was dumb. They didn't even take the lesson seriously. When Philip tugged on the Sunday school teacher's jacket and said, that's my egg. And they said, you're stupid, Philip. That doesn't make any sense. And he says, I'm not stupid. The tomb was empty. And then all of a sudden, a silence fell over the Sunday school crowd. And you know, Philip was no longer an outsider after that. You know, it's hard to point what really happened inside the heads of all those 8-year-olds. Now, Philip wasn't a particularly healthy kid anyway, and not quite a year later, he died. And at his funeral, all these little 9-year-olds came up, and they laid out all these eggs, and they were all empty. My friends, the tomb is empty. There are appearances ready to be seen and to change your life. In the name of this love. May we pray. Gracious Holy God, we know how things grow. Sunshine, soil, vitamins in the soil, water. But we don't know why. Your mystery, Holy One. Your mystery. Help us. Help us to be part of you. Help us to not have things figured out all the time. Help us to create openings of grace, not just in our own lives, but in the lives of the community around us, that we might all turn the dross of our lives into gold, even as Rumpelstiltskin did the same thing. Gracious God, we lift up our prayers to you in the name of being transformed, in the name of becoming new in your love. Amen.